Hey guys, tonight we slip into the golden haze of ancient Egypt, where the sun rises over the Nile and pharaohs wake to plates piled with food fit for gods. Picture yourself in a palace, linen curtains swaying, the air thick with the scent of warm bread and something sweet, maybe honey. Servants scurry, balancing trays, while you, bleary-eyed, wonder how anyone eats this much before noon. Spoiler: you probably won't survive this breakfast without a nap. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake in the Pharaoh's palace, the dawn light glinting off polished stone walls. Your stomach rumbles, and you're ushered to a low table, cushioned with reed mats. Breakfast isn't just food here, it's a statement. Pharaohs, seen as living gods, ate to prove their divine favor. Mainstream history tells us their morning meals were heavy on bread, often emmer wheat or barley, baked fresh daily. Loaves came in wild shapes, round, conical, even animal forms for fun. You grab a dense, slightly nutty loaf, still warm, and tear into it. It's chewy, grounding, the kind of carb bomb that makes you question modern cereal. But here's the quirky bit. Pharaohs didn't just eat bread. Some records suggest they slathered it with a paste of ground lotus seeds or even crocodile dung. Yeah, you heard that right, dung. Supposedly medicinal, it was mixed with oils for skin or digestion. You pause, bread halfway to your mouth, wondering if that's what's in the little clay pot nearby. No thanks. You'll stick to plain. Historians still argue whether this dung spread was a daily staple or just a weird elite flex like caviar today. No one's digging up jars to test it, thankfully. You notice the table's spread isn't just bread. There's a bowl of dates, sticky and sweet, and a pile of figs, their skins bursting with juice. You pop one in your mouth, and it's like candy, but better, because it's fresh from the palace gardens. The Nile's fertile banks made fruit a breakfast must-have, and pharaohs had the best pick. You lean back, imagining the farmers who toiled at dawn to get these to your plate. Their lives were tougher, but we'll get to that later. Then there's the beer. You blink at the clay cup filled with a murky golden liquid. Beer wasn't just a party drink. It was breakfast fuel. Made from fermented barley, it was thick, almost porridge-like, and lightly alcoholic. You take a sip, and it's tangy, a bit sour, like a funky kombucha. It's not your morning coffee, but it's got a kick. You smirk, thinking of your friends back home, bleary over their lattes, while you're chugging pharaoh juice. The meal feels endless. Servants keep refilling your plate, and you're stuffed but curious. Why so much food? It's not just hunger. Breakfast was a ritual, a way to show the gods and the court that the pharaoh's power was limitless. You glance at the carved reliefs on the walls, images of harvests, offerings, and the pharaoh smiting enemies. Every bite you take is part of that story, a reminder that you're not just eating, you're ruling. But let's be real, you're yawning already. The heavy food, the warm air, the distant hum of the Nile, it's lulling you. You push the plate away, tempted to nap on the cushions. Don't drift off yet. There's more to this meal than meets the eye. The bread, The fruit, the beer, they're just the start. Next, you'll dig deeper into why bread wasn't just food, but practically a currency. For now, you lean back, letting the palace sounds fade, and wonder what else these mornings held. You're still in the Pharaoh's palace, the breakfast table now a mess of crumbs and sticky date pits. The air hums with the clatter of servants clearing plates, and you're nursing that odd, tangy beer from earlier. Remember that funky brew? Your eyes drift to the bread, or what's left of it. That dense, chewy loaf wasn't just a side dish. It was the backbone of every meal, especially breakfast. You lean forward, curious, as a servant drops another basket of loaves, each one perfectly baked, golden, and smelling like a warm hug. Bread wasn't just food in ancient Egypt, it was life itself. Mainstream history confirms bread was a dietary staple, not just for pharaohs but for everyone. Emmer wheat and barley grew like weeds along the Nile, and bakers churned out loaves daily. You picture massive outdoor ovens, glowing under the dawn sky, with workers kneading dough in a sweaty, flour-dusted frenzy. Pharaohs got the fancy stuff, fine, sifted flour, sometimes mixed with sesame or poppy seeds for flair. You grab a seeded loaf, and it's like biting into a rustic bagel, crunchy on the outside, soft within. It's no wonder they ate this at every meal. It's filling and stupidly satisfying. But here's the quirky tidbit. Bread was so central it doubled as currency. You're holding a loaf, and it's not just breakfast. It's wages, taxes, even bribes. Workers building pyramids got paid in bread and beer, not gold. You chuckle, imagining handing your barista a baguette instead of cash. Some loaves were stamped with hieroglyphs, like ancient barcodes, to mark their value or origin. You turn your loaf over, half expecting a royal seal, but it's just crumbs. Still, the idea's wild. Your breakfast could buy you a goat or a favor. Historians still argue whether bread's economic role made it more valuable than gold in daily life. Some say it was just practical. Everyone needs to eat, while others think it was sacred, tied to offerings for the gods. You ponder this, tearing off another chunk. The gods got bread too, piled high on temple altars, sometimes shaped like lotus flowers or tiny crocodiles. You smirk, wondering if the priests sneaked a bite after prayers. Probably. You notice the variety on the table. There's flatbread, thin and crispy like a giant cracker, perfect for scooping up dips. Then there's a fluffy, conical loaf, almost like a muffin, that you bet was a royal favorite. Baking was an art here, and pharaohs had the best bakers, trained to make bread look as good as it tasted. You imagine the palace kitchen, a chaotic symphony of flour clouds and shouting cooks, all to ensure your breakfast was divine. But it wasn't just about taste. Bread tied you to the land. The Nile's floods made wheat grow, and every loaf was a reminder of the river's power. You glance out the palace window, where the water glints under the rising sun. Farmers were out there, knee-deep in mud, planting the grain that became your breakfast. Their lives were brutal, but their work fed an empire. You feel a pang of respect mixed with guilt as you munch on their labor. And let's not forget the dips. You spot a clay bowl of something green and oily, maybe ground herbs mixed with olive oil, imported from far-off lands. You dunk your bread, and it's a flavor explosion, sharp and earthy. Another bowl holds a paste of lentils and garlic, spicy enough to wake you up. You laugh to yourself, thinking of your friends back home, dunking their toast in avocado. This is way better, But you're biased by the palace vibes. The bread's weight in your hand feels symbolic now. It's not just food, it's power, survival, and a link to the gods. You lean back, the cushions soft against your spine, and let the thought settle. The palace hums around you, but your eyelids are heavy. The beer's buzz and the carb overload are teaming up, lulling you toward a nap. Don't doze yet. Next, you'll dive into the Nile's gifts, the fish and fowl that made these meals legendary. For now, you nibble one last bite, savoring the crunch, and let the morning unfold. You're still sprawled on those cushy reed mats, the breakfast table a battlefield of crumbs and half-eaten loaves. Remember that seated one you snagged? The beer's gone to your head, just enough to make the palace feel like a hazy dream. But your nose picks up something new. A whiff of charred meat and something briny, like the ocean snuck into the desert. Servants glide in with platters of glistening fish and roasted birds, and you realize the Nile, that shimmering ribbon outside, isn't just for pretty views. It's a breakfast buffet. You lean in, ready to taste what the river's serving up. Mainstream history tells us the Nile was Egypt's lifeline, especially for food. Fish like tilapia and perch were staples, even for pharaohs, who didn't skimp on protein. You eye a grilled fish on your plate, its skin crispy, flecked with herbs. You take a bite, and it's flaky, mild, with a smoky kick that makes you forget the bread for a second. The Nile's waters were so teeming that fishermen could haul in enough to feed palaces daily. You picture them out there now, casting nets under the dawn sky, their boats bobbing like corks. Here's the quirky bit. Some fish were sacred, and eating them was a gamble. Certain species, like the oxyrhynchus fish, were linked to gods like Hathor. You imagine a priest side-eyeing your plate, muttering about divine wrath. Quirky records suggest pharaohs sometimes ate these holy fish anyway, maybe as a power move. You chuckle, poking at your tilapia, wondering if it's secretly sacred. Better eat fast before someone notices. Historians still argue whether eating sacred fish was a bold flex, or just a practical choice in lean times. No one's sure, but it spices up your meal with a hint of rebellion. The Nile didn't just give fish. Birds were a big deal too. You spot a roasted duck, its skin golden and crackling, next to a pile of quail eggs, tiny and speckled. You crack one, and the yolk's rich, almost buttery. Ducks, geese, and even cranes were hunted or farmed along the river's marshes. You imagine hunters wading through reeds, slingshots ready, while you're here, reaping the rewards. The duck's juicy, paired with a tangy sauce, maybe vinegar and herbs, that makes you hum in approval. This is breakfast, but it feels like a feast. You notice the presentation. The fish is garnished with lotus petals, and the duck's arranged like it's posing for a painting. Pharaohs didn't just eat, they performed. Every dish screamed wealth, and the Nile made it possible. You glance at the river through the window, its surface catching the morning light. It's not just water, it's the pulse of this meal, this palace, this world. You feel a little awed, but also stuffed. How do they keep eating like this? Let's talk sides. There's a bowl of watercress, peppery and fresh, pulled straight from the Nile's banks. You toss some in your mouth, and it's like a wake-up call, cutting through the richness. Another dish holds pickled fish roe, salty and popping like tiny flavor bombs. You smirk, thinking of your friends back home, dunking their bagels in cream cheese while you're here, living like a god king. Okay, maybe not, but the food's got you feeling fancy. The meal's a reminder of the Nile's power, but also its limits. Floods could fail, and fish could vanish. You ponder the farmers and fishermen, their lives tied to the river's whims, their labors in every bite, and you're grateful, even if the palace makes it easy to forget them. You lean back, the cushions sinking under you, and let the flavors linger. The beer's buzz is fading, but the food's weight is pulling you toward a doze. Don't drift yet. Next, you'll sink into the sweet stuff, honey and fruit that made Pharaohs smile. For now, you nibble a bit of duck, savoring the Nile's gifts, and let the morning hum around you. You're still lounging in the Pharaoh's palace, the Nile's fish and duck settling nicely. Remember that crispy tilapia? The table's a glorious mess. Crumbs from that seeded bread and a stray quail egg rolling around. But your sweet tooth's tingling, and just in time, a servant slides a new platter your way. It's piled with glistening fruits and a clay jar dripping with golden honey. The air turns sugary, like a warm hug from a dessert cart, and you're ready to dive into the Pharaoh's favorite breakfast treats. These aren't just snacks. They're a taste of divine indulgence. Mainstream history notes that fruit and honey were breakfast staples for Egypt's elite. The Nile's fertile delta churned out dates, figs, and pomegranates like nobody's business. You grab a date, sticky and caramel sweet, and it's like biting into nature's candy bar. Figs come next, their jammy insides bursting as you pop one in your mouth. These weren't roadside market finds. Pharaohs had private orchards, tended by workers who knew one bad fig could mean a bad day. You picture them out there, sweating under palm trees, while you're here, living the sweet life. Now, the quirky tidbit, honey wasn't just a treat, it was practically sacred. Egyptians believed it came from the tears of the sun god Ra. You dip a finger into the jar, and the honey's thick, floral, with a hint of wildflowers. It's so good you almost buy the Ra story. Beekeepers risked stings to harvest it from clay hives, and some tombs even had honey jars for the afterlife. You smirk, imagining a pharaoh demanding honey in the great beyond. Historians still argue whether honey's divine status made it a royal exclusive, or if even peasants sneaked a taste. Either way, you're not sharing this jar. You drizzle honey over a slice of that emmer bread from earlier. Call back to that currency loaf, right? The combo's heavenly, like a proto-pancake. You take a bite and it's crunchy, sweet, and just sticky enough to make you lick your fingers. The table's also got pomegranates, their ruby seeds sparkling like jewels. You scoop a handful and they're tart, popping with juice that stains your chin. You laugh to yourself, picturing your friends back home, chugging their smoothie bowls, while you're here, feasting like Cleopatra's distant cousin. But it's not all fruit and honey. There's a bowl of something weird, milk mixed with crushed dates and barley. You sip it, and it's like a gritty milkshake, sweet but odd. Apparently, this was a royal energy drink, meant to keep pharaohs spry for morning rituals. You're not sold, but you respect the hustle. The servants keep refilling your plate, and you're starting to feel like a fruit-hoarding dragon. Why so much? Because sweetness was power. Offering guests a spread like this screamed wealth and divine favor. You glance at the palace walls, where carvings show offerings of fruit to the gods. Every bite ties you to that cosmic game, where pharaohs played god-kings and food was their chessboard. But let's be real, you're stuffed. The honey's richness and the fruit's tang are making your eyelids droop. You lean back, the reed mats creaking, and let the sugar buzz hum through you. Outside, the Nile glints, and you think of the orchards and beekeepers who made this possible. Their hands are in every bite, even if the palace forgets them. One last treat catches your eye. A honey-dipped lotus flower, edible and delicate. You nibble it and it's subtle, like eating a perfumed cloud. You chuckle, thinking how your dentist would lose it over all this sugar. The sweetness lingers, pulling you deeper into the morning's haze. Don't nod off yet. Next, you'll sip more of that breakfast beer, the barley brew that powered these feasts. For now, you savor one last date, its warmth spreading through you, and let the palace's hum carry you along. You're still sunk into those palace cushions, the sweet afterglow of honey and dates lingering on your tongue. Remember that lotus flower nibble? The table's a riot of empty platters, sticky fig skins, and that one lonely quail egg from the Nile's hall. Your gaze lands on a clay cup, refilled with that murky golden liquid you tried earlier. It's beer, the Pharaoh's breakfast brew, and it's back for round two. You pick it up, the cup cool against your palm, and sniff the tangy, yeasty scent. This isn't your craft IPA, it's ancient Egypt's morning fuel, and you're about to dive back in. Mainstream history confirms beer was a breakfast essential, not just a party trick. Made from fermented barley or emmer wheat, it was thick, almost chewy, with a low alcohol kick. You take a swig, and it's like drinking a sour liquid bread. Remember that currency loaf you munched? Same vibe. Egyptians called it heket, and everyone, from pharaohs to pyramid builders, chugged it daily. Breweries ran non-stop, with women often leading the charge, stirring vats under the hot sun. You picture them now, their arms dusted with barley, while you're here, sipping their masterpiece. Here's the quirky bit. Beer was so vital it doubled as medicine. Some recipes mixed in herbs or even garlic to cure ailments like upset stomachs or bad vibes. You eye your cup, wondering if it's secretly a health tonic. One papyrus claims pharaohs drank beer with ground lotus for divine clarity. You snort, imagining a priest prescribing this for your Monday blues. Historians still argue whether these medicinal brews were common or just elite nonsense, like kale smoothies today. Either way, you're feeling pretty clear-headed, if a bit buzzy. You notice the beer's texture, gritty, with bits of husk you have to chew. It's not exactly refreshing, but it's filling, like a meal in a cup. Pharaohs loved it for breakfast because it was safe. The Nile's water could be dicey, but fermentation killed the bugs. You smirk, thinking of your friends back home, boiling their kettle for tea, while you're here, dodging dysentery with beer. The cup's heavy, glazed with blue lotus designs, and you wonder if it's a royal exclusive. Probably. Everything here screams, "I'm better than you." The beer's not alone. There's a side of bread. Yep, that staple again. Perfect for dunking. You tear off a chunk, dip it in the brew, and it's like a boozy soup, earthy and weirdly comforting. Some pharaohs paired beer with dried fish or dates, but you're keeping it simple. The table's got other drinks too. A jug of milk, maybe from royal cows, and a watery fruit juice, tart like pomegranate. You stick with the beer though. It's growing on you, like a funky friend you didn't expect to like. But why beer for breakfast? It's not just taste, it was culture, survival, even politics. Pharaohs served it to show off their control over grain and labor. Every sip you take is a nod to the fields, the brewers, the Nile's floods. You glance outside, where the river's still glinting under the morning sun. It's humbling, but the palace makes it easy to forget the hands behind this cup. You lean back, the cushions soft, and let the thought settle. The beer's buzz is subtle, warming your chest. You're full, a little sleepy, and the palace's hum, servants' footsteps, distant lutes, is lulling you. You laugh to yourself, picturing a pharaoh napping mid-meal, crown askew. Don't doze yet. Next, you'll peek into the kitchen chaos, where servants hustled to make these feasts happen. For now, you take one last sip, the barley's tang fading on your tongue, and let the morning's haze wrap around you. You're still slumped on those plush palace cushions, the beer's warm buzz fading. Remember that gritty barley brew? The breakfast table's a wreck, littered with date pits, breadcrumbs, and that one fish bone from the Nile's bounty. The air shifts, carrying a new scent. Smoke, flour, and something faintly sour, like rising dough. You realize the magic of this meal. Bread, fish, honey, beer didn't just appear. It came from the palace kitchens, where servants are in a dawn frenzy to feed the pharaoh's court. You push off the cushions, curious, and follow the clatter to see the chaos behind your breakfast. Mainstream history tells us ancient Egyptian palace kitchens were massive hive-like operations. Feeding hundreds, pharaohs, nobles, priests, meant round-the-clock work. You step into a courtyard buzzing with activity. Fires roar under clay ovens, and servants, sweat-soaked, knead dough on stone slabs. Others gut fish or pluck ducks, their hands a blur. You dodge a boy hauling a basket of emmer wheat, nearly tripping over a stray onion. It's loud, hot, and smells like a bakery crossed with a fish market. This chaos churned out every loaf and platter you've eaten, and you're a little awed. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some servants used magic to protect the food. You spot a woman muttering spells over a dough pile, tossing in a charm, a tiny clay scarab. Papyri mention kitchen rituals to ward off evil spirits or bad batches. You grin, imagining her cursing a burnt loaf like it's possessed. Historians still argue whether these spells were serious religious acts or just superstition to calm stressed cooks. Either way, you're glad your bread, remember that currency loaf, came out divine, scarab or not. You watch a baker shape dough into lotus flowers, her fingers nimble despite the heat. She slides them into an oven, and the scent hits you. Warm, nutty, like home, if home was a 4,000-year-old palace. Another servant stirs a vat of beer, skimming foam with a reed. You recognize that tangy scent from your breakfast cup. The scale's wild, huge jars of grain, piles of fish, baskets of dates, all for one meal. You think of your kitchen back home, where a toaster's the big tech. This is next level, and you're not even helping. The hierarchy's clear. A stern overseer barks orders, his kilt crisp, while workers scurry. Some are slaves, others paid in. You guessed it. Bread and beer. You feel a pang. Their dawn started hours ago, while you were snoozing. Yet there's pride in their work. A girl grinding grain hums softly, and a fish cutter jokes with his friend, their laughter cutting through the chaos. You smile, but it's bittersweet. Their labor's in every bite you took, yet they'll never taste the honey or lotus petals. You linger by a corner where a man roasts quail over a fire, the flames licking the bird's skin to a perfect crackle. He brushes it with oil and herbs, and you're hungry again, despite the feast. Another servant pounds garlic and lentils into a paste, maybe that spicy dip you loved. You're tempted to sneak a taste, but the overseer's glare keeps you in line. You chuckle, picturing yourself banned from the palace for snack theft. The kitchen's a microcosm of Egypt. Order, sweat, and a touch of magic, all tied to the Nile's rhythm. You glance past the courtyard, where the river glints under the rising sun. Without its floods, these ovens would go cold. You lean against a wall, the stone cool, and let the sounds, shouts, sizzling, grinding, wash over you. Your eyelids droop. The beer and food are teaming up, and this chaos is oddly soothing. Don't drift yet. Next, you'll join the Pharaohs' dining rituals, where every bite had rules. For now, you watch one last loaf slide from the oven, its steam curling like a spell, and let the morning hum. You're back on those cushy palace mats, the kitchen's smoky chaos still buzzing in your head. Remember that scarab-charmed dough? The breakfast table's been cleared, but now it's reset for a grander affair. A royal dining ritual. Not just a meal, but a performance. Servants sweep in, silent as shadows, laying out polished alabaster plates and gold-rimmed cups. The air hums with anticipation, and you're swept into a feast where every bite follows sacred rules. This isn't your casual bread and beer morning. It's a choreographed dance of power and piety, and you're in the front row. Mainstream history reveals that Pharaohs' meals, especially formal ones, were steeped in ritual. Food was an offering to the gods, and dining was a way to affirm the Pharaoh's divine status. You sit at a long table, draped in linen, facing a spread that makes breakfast look like a snack. There's roasted goose, glazed with honey. Call back to that Ra's tears jar, next to stacks of lotus-shaped bread and bowls of spiced lentils. You reach for a slice of goose, its meat tender, dripping with sweetness, but a priest's sharp glance stops you. Apparently, there's a protocol. Here's the quirky tidbit. Before anyone eats, priests bless the food with chants, waving incense that smells like burnt flowers. You spot one sprinkling Nile water over the table, muttering about cosmic balance. Some records suggest they even fed the gods first, placing morsels before statues. You stifle a giggle, picturing a stone Horus munching on bread. Historians still argue whether these rituals were purely symbolic or if priests believed the gods actually ate. Either way, you're starving, and the incense is making you woozy. You finally get the nod to eat, but it's not a free-for-all. Servants carve the meat with precise cuts, and you're handed a portion based on your rank. Lucky you, you're near the Pharaoh's end. The goose is divine, paired with a sauce of crushed grapes and herbs that's tart and rich. You nibble that lotus bread, its petals flaky, and dip it in a garlicky paste from the kitchen chaos. Every dish is art. Fish arranged like a river, fruits piled like offerings. You smirk, thinking of your friends back home, scarfing takeout while you're here, dining like a demigod. The rules don't stop at blessings. You notice everyone eats with their hands, but only the right one. Left's for unclean tasks. You fumble, trying to keep up, and nearly drop a date. Music drifts in, lutes and harps, softening the mood, but you're hyper-aware of the priests watching. Meals like this reinforced hierarchy. Pharaoh first, nobles next, you somewhere in the middle. Even the beer, yep, that barley brew's back, is served in order of status. You sip from a fancy cup, its lotus carvings cool under your fingers, and feel briefly important. But it's not just pomp. These rituals tied the pharaoh to the gods and the Nile's cycles. You glance at the wall reliefs, images of harvests, feasts, and the river's flood. Every bite you take is part of that story. A reminder that the pharaoh's power feeds the land, or so they claim. You wonder about the servants, the farmers, the brewers whose sweat made this possible. They're not invited, but their labor's in every mouthful. You lean back, the goose and beer settling heavily. The music's hypnotic, and the incense curls like a dream. You laugh to yourself, imagining a priest scolding you for using the wrong hand. The table's still laden, but you're full, and the ritual's weight, literal and cosmic, is pulling you toward a nap. Don't doze yet. Next, you'll sniff out the exotic spices that gave these dishes their kick. For now, you savor one last bite of honeyed goose, the harp's notes fading, and let the palace's rhythm lull you. You're still at that grand dining table, the ritual's incense fading. Remember that priestly side-eye over your hand etiquette? The goose and lotus bread sit heavy in your stomach, and the palace hums with the clink of gold cups and soft lute strums. Your nose twitches, catching a sharp, unfamiliar scent. Something earthy, maybe spicy, cutting through the honeyed sweetness. The dishes before you, from fish to dips, owe their magic to exotic seasonings, and you're about to sniff out where these flavors came from. These aren't just spices, they're secrets, carried across deserts and seas to make Pharaoh's meals sing. Mainstream history confirms ancient Egyptians loved their seasonings, even for breakfast. Staples like coriander, cumin, and dill grew along the Nile, but pharaohs craved rarer stuff: saffron, cinnamon, maybe even pepper from lands like Punt or India. You pick up a piece of that grilled tilapia from the Nile's haul, its surface dusted with a reddish powder. One bite, and it's a warm, nutty kick, probably cumin mixed with something fancier. You imagine trade caravans, camels swaying under spice sacks, all to get this pinch to your plate. It's humbling, and your taste buds are throwing a party. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some spices were so precious they doubled as tomb treasures. Archaeologists found saffron and frankincense in pharaohs' burials, meant for the afterlife's feasts. You grin, picturing a mummy demanding a spiced fish in the great beyond. Hope they packed that crocodile dung paste too. Historians still argue whether these spices were daily luxuries or reserved for rituals like the one you just sat through. Were pharaohs sprinkling saffron like it's no big deal? Or was it a flex for gods and guests? You're betting on flex, given the gold cups. You dip a chunk of that emmer bread, call back to its currency days, into a bowl of green oil flecked with herbs. It's sharp, maybe dill, and something citrusy, like a proto-pesto. You savor it, marveling at how a pinch of plant dust turns bread into a delicacy. Another dish holds lentils spiked with a mystery spice, cinnamon maybe? It's sweet, warm, and makes you think of far-off forests you'll never see. You laugh to yourself, imagining your friends back home, shaking table salt like savages while you're here, tasting the ancient world's spice rack. But it wasn't just taste. Spices were power. Serving a saffron-dusted duck screamed wealth, because that stuff cost more than some servants' lives. You glance at the table where a tiny clay jar holds a rust-colored powder, guarded like a jewel. You're tempted to sneak a pinch, but the priests are still lurking. Spices also had magic. Some were burned as incense or mixed into medicines, like that lotus-laced beer you sipped. You wonder if this cumin on your fish is secretly curing your soul. Probably not, but it's delicious. The trade behind these flavors was brutal. You picture merchants sailing to Punt, dodging storms and pirates for a sack of frankincense, or caravans crossing Sinai's sands, praying their cinnamon survives bandits. Their risks are in every bite, yet the palace makes it feel effortless. You lean back, the cushions creaking, and let the thought settle. The lute's notes drift, and the spice's warmth lingers on your tongue. You're full, a little sleepy, and the palace's glow is lulling you. One last sniff catches a whiff of something floral, saffron maybe, on a nearby fruit platter. You chuckle, thinking how your grocery store's spice aisle would weep in shame. The meal's weight and the morning's haze are tugging at your eyelids. Don't drift yet. Next, you'll see how pharaohs used food to flex their control. For now, you nibble a spiced lentil, its heat fading softly, and let the palace's hum wrap around you. You're still sunk into those palace cushions, the spice of that cumin-dusted fish lingering. Remember that saffron flecks? The dining table's a masterpiece of excess, with gold cups glinting and leftover lotus bread crumbling under your fingers. The lute's soft hum fades, but the air feels heavier now, charged with purpose. You realize this feast, bread, beer, honey, spices, isn't just about eating. It's a weapon, a way for pharaohs to flex control over nobles, priests, and even the gods. You lean forward, catching the pharaoh's glance, and sense every bite you take is part of a bigger game. Mainstream history shows pharaohs used food to cement power. Hosting lavish feasts, like the ritual you just sat through, was a political move. You watch nobles around the table, their plates piled high with goose and dates, their loyalty bought with every mouthful. Pharaohs controlled the Nile's grain. Remember that currency bread? And doling it out kept everyone in line. You grab a fig, its sweetness bursting, and realize it's not just dessert. It's a reminder of who owns the orchards. This meal screams, I feed you, I rule you. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some pharaohs gave out feast tokens, clay seals stamped with hieroglyphs, to grant access to banquets. You spot a noble flashing one, like it's a VIP pass to Coachella. Without it, you're stuck eating peasant gruel. You pat your tunic, hoping you've got one stashed, then laugh at the thought of gate-crashing a royal feast. Historians still argue whether these tokens were common or just for elite flexing during festivals. Either way, you're glad you're at the table, not begging outside. You take a sip of that barley beer, call back to its medicinal buzz, and notice how the servants pour it first for the pharaoh, then nobles, then you. The hierarchy's blatant, and food enforces it. The pharaoh's plate has rare saffron and cinnamon, while lesser guests get plain lentils. You're mid-tier, so your goose is spiced but not dripping in gold dust. You smirk, thinking of your friends back home, fighting over the last pizza slice. While here, power decides who gets the good stuff. But it's not just about showing off. Food tied the pharaoh to the divine. You see him offer a loaf to a statue of Amun, the priests chanting like it's a sacred deal. Every feast was a contract. The pharaoh feeds the gods bless the Nile's floods. You glance at the river through a window, its water calm under the midday sun. Without those floods, the grain, the beer, the figs, all gone. You feel the weight of it, how one bad season could topple this whole show. The control extends beyond the palace. Pharaohs stockpiled grain in massive silos, doling it out to workers or allies. You picture farmers, their hands calloused from harvesting, praying for a loaf while you're here, stuffed. Food was a leash. Nobles stayed loyal for feasts. Workers toiled for rations. You lean back, the cushions soft, and wonder about rebellion. Did anyone ever say no to this game? Probably not. They were too busy eating. You nibble a spiced lentil, its heat a faint echo of the kitchen's chaos. The feast is winding down, but the power play lingers. You laugh to yourself, imagining a pharaoh bribing you with extra honey. The lute's back, its notes dreamy, and the food's weight pulls at your eyelids. Don't doze yet. Next, you'll dive into the priest's food rules, where divine taboos ruled the plate. For now, you savor one last sip of beer, its tang grounding you, and let the palace's hum carry you along. You're still at that lavish palace table, the pharaoh's power play sinking in. Remember those feast tokens? The air's thick with the fading scent of saffron and incense, and the table's a glorious mess of goose bones and sticky date pits. You're full, a bit woozy from that barley beer, when a priest in a crisp linen robe glides by, eyeing your plate like you've committed a crime. You realize the food here isn't just about power. It's bound by divine rules, especially for priests. You're about to navigate the temple's food taboos, where one wrong bite could anger the gods. Mainstream history tells us priests in ancient Egypt followed strict dietary codes, especially when serving gods like Amun or Osiris. Their meals, even breakfast, were acts of worship, often limited to pure foods like bread, fruit, and milk. You picture a priest nibbling a plain loaf, call back to that currency bread, while you're here, scarfing spiced goose. Temples had their own kitchens, separate from the palace's chaos, where priests prepared offerings with surgical precision. You grab a fig, its sweetness grounding you, but wonder if it's temple approved, or too indulgent for their holy palates. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some foods were straight up banned for priests. Fish, like that tilapia you loved, was often taboo in certain temples because it was linked to chaos gods like Seth. You glance at your empty fish plate, half expecting a lightning bolt. Papyri mention priests fasting or avoiding garlic to stay pure for rituals. You chuckle, imagining a priest holding his nose near your garlicky lentil dip. Historians still argue whether these taboos were universal or varied by temple. Did all priests ditch fish, or just the picky ones? You're just glad you're not fasting. You notice a priest sipping milk from a clay cup, his movements slow, like he's praying with every swallow. Milk was sacred, tied to Hathor, the cow goddess, and you bet it's from a temple herd. You try a sip from a nearby jug, and it's warm, creamy, with a grassy note, way better than your store-bought carton. Priests also ate divine bread, baked in shapes like ankhs or suns offered to gods before they took a bite. You smirk, thinking of your friends back home, dunking cereal in milk, while you're here, tasting sacred vibes. But these rules weren't just quirks. Food taboos reinforced the priests' role as gatekeepers to the divine. By eating pure, they stayed worthy to commune with gods, ensuring the Nile's floods and the land's fertility. You glance at the river outside, its water glinting under the sun, and feel the stakes. One wrong meal, and the priests might break the cosmic deal. Yikes. You're happy to stick with your figs, no chaos gods invited. The temple's influence spills into the palace. You spot a servant offering the pharaoh a cleansed loaf, blessed by priests. Even he follows some rules, or at least pretends to. It's a reminder. The gods are watching, and food's their language. You lean back, the cushions sinking, and ponder the workers who grew the grain for that loaf. Their sweat's in every bite, but they're stuck eating whatever's not taboo. You feel a twinge of guilt, but the beer's buzz softens it. The priest's stare lingers, and you laugh to yourself, imagining him confiscating your honey jar for being too sweet for raw. The palace hum. Lutes, footsteps, distant chants is lulling you, and the food's weight tugs at your eyelids. Don't drift yet. Next, you'll compare the peasant's scraps to this royal feast. For now, you nibble a safe date, its caramel warmth fading, and let the morning's haze wrap around you. You're still lounging in the palace, that priest's glare over your fishy faux pas fading. Remember those temple taboos? The table's a royal mess, with gold cups tipped over and a stray lotus breadcrumb stuck to your tunic. The air's warm, heavy with honey and spice, but your mind drifts beyond these polished walls to the muddy fields and cramped huts where Egypt's commoners live. You've been feasting like a god king, but what did the peasants eat? You're about to compare their scraps to this lavish spread, and the contrast is starker than the desert sun. Mainstream history shows most Egyptians, farmers, laborers, fishermen, survived on a simpler diet than pharaohs. Bread and beer were their staples, just like your palace breakfast, but theirs were coarser, made from unsifted barley or emmer wheat. You picture a farmer, hands rough from plowing, tearing into a gritty loaf. Call back to that currency bread, but less fancy. No honey or saffron for them. Their meals were about survival, not splendor. You grab a date from the table, its sweetness now feeling like a guilty pleasure, knowing most never tasted this. Here's the quirky tidbit. Peasants sometimes ate famine foods like papyrus roots or lotus stems when harvests failed. You imagine chomping on a chewy, bitter root and your nose wrinkles. Some records even mention boiled hedgehog as a protein source. Yep, spiky little guys. You laugh, picturing a farmer eyeing his dinner like it's a bad Tinder date. Historians still argue whether these odd foods were common or only eaten in desperation. Either way, you're glad your plate's got goose, not hedgehog. You think of a peasant's breakfast, a hunk of coarse bread, maybe dipped in onion juice or a watery lentil stew. Beer was their lifeline, same as yours, that barley brews everywhere. But theirs was thinner, barely alcoholic, more like a sad soup. You sip your palace beer, its tang rich, and feel the gap. They might have snagged a fish from the Nile, but nothing like your crispy tilapia. Theirs was probably dried or half spoiled. Fruit? Maybe a bruised fig if they were lucky. You pop another date in your mouth, its caramel warmth a stark reminder of their empty plates. The contrast isn't just food, it's life. You're stuffed, surrounded by lutes and linen, while peasants woke at dawn to plow or fish, their kids scavenging for scraps. They ate to work, not to flex power or please gods. Yet their labor fed this palace. You glance at the Nile through a window, its water feeding both their fields and your feasts. Without their sweat, no bread, no beer, no honey. You feel a pang like you're cheating by sitting here. Sometimes, peasants got palace leftovers during festivals, a rare treat. You imagine them crowding temple gates, hoping for a scrap of that spiced goose. It was a crumb of kindness, but also control. Pharaohs kept them loyal with occasional handouts. You smirk, thinking of your friends back home, splitting a pizza, while here, a single fig could spark a riot. The system's brutal, but it worked. Egypt thrived on this divide. You lean back, the cushions soft, and let the thoughts settle. The palace hum, servant steps, distant chants, feels distant now, like you're caught between worlds. You nibble a bit of bread, its crunch grounding you, but it tastes heavier, knowing its cost. Your eyelids droop. The beer and dates are teaming up, lulling you. Don't doze yet. Next, you'll decode food clues in ancient tombs. For now, you savor one last sip of beer, its warmth fading, and let the morning's haze carry you. You're still slumped on those palace cushions, the weight of the peasants' coarse bread lingering in your thoughts. Remember their hedgehog dinners? The table before you is a fading banquet, with smeared honey jars and a lone fig rolling near a gold cup. The palace's glow feels distant now, and your mind wanders to the shadowed tombs where pharaohs rest, their meals preserved for eternity. You're about to decode the food clues left in these ancient burials, where every loaf and jar tells a story of breakfasts past. It's like snooping through a royal pantry, only creepier. Mainstream history confirms tombs were packed with food for the afterlife. Pharaohs believed they'd feast forever, so their burials included bread, beer, fruit, even mummified meat. You imagine slipping into a tomb, the air cool and musty, lit by flickering torches. There's a stone shelf piled with clay jars. Some hold barley beer, others honey, like that Ra's tears jar you loved. You spot a loaf, shriveled but intact, shaped like a lotus. Call back to those ritual breads. It's eerie, knowing this was meant for a pharaoh's eternal breakfast. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some tombs had food spells carved on walls, meant to magically summon meals. You picture hieroglyphs glowing faintly, promising endless fish and figs. One tomb even had a tiny model bakery, complete with clay bakers kneading dough for the afterlife. You chuckle, imagining a ghost pharaoh firing a clay chef for burnt bread. Historians still argue whether these spells were literal, did they expect real food, or symbolic, a poetic send-off. Either way, you're glad you're not eating 4,000-year-old leftovers. You envision more finds. A jar of dried dates, their sweetness locked in time, or a duck, mummified with spices, ready for a cosmic feast. Archaeologists found fish bones in some tombs, probably that Nile tilapia you munched, packed to keep the pharaoh's protein game strong. Beer jars were sealed with clay, some still holding a faint yeasty whiff. You smirk, thinking of your friends back home, stocking their fridge, while here, pharaohs prepped for eternity with better snacks. These clues reveal more than menus. Food in tombs showed status. Only the elite got honey or saffron. You picture a lesser noble's tomb, Maybe just a stale loaf and some onion juice, like the peasants' scraps. The Pharaohs' haul, though, was a flex. Look at my breakfast, even in death. It's also practical. The afterlife was a journey, and nobody wants to starve on the way to Osiris. You feel a chill, wondering if the gods ever showed up for the meal. The tombs also hint at labor. Every jar, every loaf, came from workers, farmers, bakers, beekeepers, whose lives fueled these feasts. You see their echo in the tomb's bounty, their hands shaping the bread now crumbling to dust. It's humbling, and you lean back. The palace's warmth, a stark contrast to the tomb's cold stone. The Nile's glint outside reminds you its floods made this all possible, even the afterlife's pantry. You laugh to yourself, picturing a pharaoh waking in the afterlife, demanding his lotus bread and finding only dust. The palace hum, lutes, soft footsteps, is soothing, and the feast's weight pulls at your eyelids. Your mind's still in the tomb, though, sifting through jars and spells. Don't drift yet. Next, you'll toil with the farmers who grew this food. For now, you nibble a stray fig, its sweetness grounding you, and let the morning's haze linger. You're still sprawled in those palace cushions, the tomb's dusty jars of honey and bread fading from your mind. Remember those afterlife food spells? The table's a wreck, with a lone date pit and some spilled beer drying in the sun. The palace feels like a dream bubble, all gold and spice, but your thoughts sink to the muddy fields where Egypt's farmers toiled. You've eaten their harvests, bread, figs, fish, but now you're trudging alongside them, knee-deep in Nile silt, to see the struggle that fed the pharaoh's feasts. It's gritty, sweaty, and far from the lotus bread's glow. Mainstream history tells us farmers were the backbone of ancient Egypt, growing the wheat and barley that became your breakfast staples. The Nile's annual floods turned fields into fertile mush, perfect for emmer and barley. But planting and harvesting was brutal. You're out there now, the sun scorching your neck as you push a wooden plow through thick mud. Your hands ache, and you're dodging ox dung, way less glam than the palace. These crops became that currency bread you munched, but for farmers it was survival, not a royal flex. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some farmers left field offerings, small clay figures or bread loaves buried in the soil, to ensure good harvests. You spot one, a crude clay cow half sunk in the dirt, and grin, imagining it begging the gods for rain. Papyri mention farmers chanting to Hapi, the Nile god, while planting. Historians still argue whether these rituals were heartfelt or just desperate bets against drought. You're betting on desperation, one bad flood, and it's papyrus roots for dinner. Call back to those peasant famine foods. You watch a farmer scatter barley seeds, his face lined with exhaustion. He'll wait months for this to grow, praying the Nile doesn't betray him. If it does, no bread, no beer, no Pharaoh's feast. You think of the palace kitchen's chaos, where his grain became your lotus-shaped loaf. The gap's brutal. You're stuffed with honey and goose, while he's lucky to eat coarse bread and onions. You wipe sweat from your brow, feeling his labor in every bite you took. Harvest time's worse. You join a group swinging sickles, cutting wheat under a relentless sun. Your back screams and chaff sticks to your skin like glitter you can't shake. The grain's hauled to royal storehouses. Pharaohs control it, doling out rations or wages. You might get a loaf for a week's work, maybe some of that thin peasant beer. You laugh, picturing your friends back home, griping about a 9 to 5, while here, farmers break their bodies for a crumb of what you ate. The Nile's the boss, though. You glance at its shimmering water, the lifeblood of these fields. Floods too weak and crops fail, too strong and fields drown. Farmers read the river like a moody god, and you feel their anxiety. Yet their work built an empire. Every fig, every fish, every sip of beer traces back to this mud. You're humbled, but also heavy. Guilt mixes with the palace's feast in your gut. You slump onto a field's edge, the earth cool under you. A farmer offers you a sip of his beer, watery, sour, nothing like your palace brew. You take it, grateful, and let the moment sink in. The palace hum feels far away, replaced by wind rustling reeds. Your eyelids droop. The sun, the work, the food's weight are pulling you under. Don't doze yet. Next, you'll sail with merchants chasing rare ingredients. For now, you chew a stray barley grain, its earthiness grounding you, and let the field's quiet hum. You're back in the palace, the farmer's muddy fields fading like a dream. Remember that clay cow offering? The cushions feel softer after imagining their back-breaking toil. And the table's remnants, crumbs of lotus bread, a sticky honey jar, seem almost too rich. Your nose catches a faint whiff of cinnamon, that exotic spice from earlier, and you're pulled to the Nile's edge, where merchants' boats bob under the sun. You're about to sail with them, chasing rare ingredients like saffron and frankincense across seas and deserts. These flavors made your breakfast divine, but the journey to get them was no palace picnic. Mainstream history confirms ancient Egypt thrived on trade for luxury foods. While the Nile gave bread and fish, pharaohs craved spices, oils, and resins from places like Punt, modern-day Somalia, or distant India. You're on a creaky wooden boat now, the river's current tugging you south. Sacks of grain, call back to those farmers' barley, are stacked for trade, but you're after the good stuff. Tiny pouches of saffron, worth more than gold. You grip the railing, the wind sharp with salt and promise, knowing one storm could sink this haul. Here's the quirky tidbit. Merchants sometimes offered sea gifts to appease gods like Hathor for safe voyages. You watch a sailor toss a clay jar of beer, yep, that barley brew, into the waves, muttering prayers. Some records mention sinking bread or even live ducks as offerings. You chuckle, picturing a soggy loaf bobbing like a sad buoy. Historians still argue whether these gifts were routine or only for desperate trips. Either way, you're hoping Hathor's in a good mood because you're not swimming back. The boat docks at a bustling port, and you're hit with chaos. Traders shouting, camels grumbling, and the air thick with spice dust. You barter some grain for a pinch of frankincense, its smoky scent like the temple's incense. Another trader offers cinnamon sticks, their warmth reminding you of that lentil dish you loved. These aren't just flavors, they're status. Only pharaohs could afford to dust their goose with this stuff. You smirk, thinking of your friends back home, sprinkling budget paprika, while you're here, trading for royal vibes. But the journey's brutal. You hear tales of desert caravans ambushed by bandits or ships lost to Red Sea storms. Merchants risked everything for a sack of saffron, and you feel their gamble in every pinch on your plate. Some ingredients, like pepper, came from so far, maybe India, that you wonder how they even got here. You picture sailors navigating by stars, their hands blistered, all for a pharaoh's breakfast whim. It's humbling, and you clutch your frankincense pouch tighter. Back at the palace, these treasures land in the kitchen's chaos, where cooks transform them into your spiced fish or honeyed bread. You realize the Nile's not just a river, it's a highway, linking Egypt to the world's flavors. You glance at its glinting water, grateful for its flow but aware of the blood and sweat behind every spice. The farmers, the merchants, the sailors, they're the real magic, not some priest's chant. You lean back, the boat sway still in your bones. The palace hum, Lute's soft footsteps, feels far away, and the cinnamon's warmth lingers on your tongue. You laugh, imagining a merchant haggling for your leftover dates. The feast's weight and the journey's thrill are tugging at your eyelids. Don't doze yet. Next, you'll trace how Egypt's cuisine echoes in today's world. For now, you sniff the frankincense, its smoke curling softly, and let the Nile's rhythm lull you. You're still nestled in those palace cushions, the merchant's boat and its frankincense pouches fading like a sea breeze. Remember that soggy bread offering to Hathor? The table's a ghost of its former glory, just a few date pits and a smear of honey left, glinting under the fading light. Your journey through ancient Egypt's feasts has been a whirlwind of bread, beer, and Nile-born delights. But now you're tracing their echoes into the modern world. You lean back, the Nile's hum in your ears, and explore how the Pharaohs' breakfasts live on in today's kitchens, from Cairo to your own. Mainstream history shows Egypt's cuisine left a lasting mark, with staples like bread and lentils still central to modern Egyptian diets. You picture a bustling Cairo market where vendors hawk flatbreads, not unlike that emmer loaf you tore into, callback to its currency days. Today's Aish Baladi, a puffy whole wheat bread, is baked in ovens that echo ancient clay domes. You imagine biting into one, warm and slightly charred, maybe dipped in full mesdames, a fava bean stew that feels like a cousin to your palace lentil dip. The Nile's still feeding these traditions, its floods tamed but vital. Here's the quirky tidbit. Modern Egyptians sometimes sweeten their bread with fenugreek, a nod to ancient flavorings like lotus seeds. You grin, picturing a Cairo grandma sprinkling it like it's no big deal, unaware she's channeling Pharaohs. Some even swear by ancient recipes, like beer-battered fish, that might trace back to your Nile tilapia. Historians still argue whether these links are direct or just culinary coincidence. Did Pharaohs really inspire today's street food, or is it wishful thinking? You're betting on a bit of both, especially after tasting that honeyed lotus flower. You think of molokhia, a green soupy dish served across Egypt today, made from a leafy plant that grew wild in Pharaoh's times. It's slimy, like okra, but spiced with garlic and coriander, callback to those exotic trade spices. You imagine slurping it in a modern Egyptian home, the flavors grounding you in the same Nile soil that fed your palace feast. Beer's less common now, replaced by tea or hibiscus drinks, but you bet that tangy barley brew would feel right at home in a rustic village tavern. The influence spreads beyond Egypt. You ponder flatbreads across the Middle East, Lebanese pita, Syrian kubs, born from the same wheat and ovens as your lotus-shaped loaf. Even hummus, that chickpea dip you love, has roots in ancient pulses like lentils, mashed with oils and herbs. You smirk, thinking of your friends back home, scooping hummus at a party, clueless they're nibbling on Egypt's legacy. The pharaoh's obsession with food as power, ritual, and survival shaped a cuisine that's outlived their tombs. But it's not just recipes. The communal spirit of those palace feasts, nobles sharing goose, Priests blessing bread, lives in Egypt's modern hospitality. You picture a family passing plates of koshari, a street food mix of lentils, pasta, and crispy onions, laughing together. It's humbler than your saffron-dusted duck, but the vibe's the same. Food binds people, tells stories. You feel a warmth, like the Nile's flow connects you to both past and present. The palace hum, lutes, footsteps, fades now, and you're heavy with figs, beer, and memories. The farmer's mud, the merchant's seas, the priest's taboos, they're all in these flavors, then and now. You laugh softly, imagining a pharaoh trying koshari, crown askew. Your eyelids droop, the cushions sinking deeper, and the Nile's glint outside grows dim. As the palace fades, you're drifting now, the Nile's soft ripples carrying you. The bread, the honey, the spices, they blur into a warm golden haze. You're safe here, wrapped in the hum of ancient fields and modern markets. Let the river's rhythm slow your breath, each wave a whisper of rest. The feasts are done, the stories told. Your body's heavy, your mind soft, like sand settling after a flood. Close your eyes, let the cushions hold you, and slip into a quiet, dreamless sleep. The Nile flows on, and you're at peace.